Sir Michael appalled at appointment of Attorney General as Acting Governor General. Striking PNG power workers in Port Moresby returned to work. And the historic relocation of Fairfax Harbour to Motukea.
This is National EMTV News with Tokana Hasavi.
Good evening and welcome to Friday's news. It's good to have your company. Grand Chief Sir Michael Somare has appealed to the ruling government and members of Parliament to respect the laws that govern this nation. Sir Michael said this in Parliament when responding to the announcement made by Prime Minister Peter O'Neill on the Attorney General's appointment as Acting Governor General.
Acting Governor General for the next 2 weeks, while the Governor General is attending to the celebrations of the independence of Cook Islands, Mr. Speaker.
Debate on the Acting Governor General's appointment boiled after Sir Michael realized the Attorney General Minister's absence in the chamber today, including the announcement by Prime Minister Peter O'Neill. The disappointed father of the nation claimed the ruling government had misused the Constitution's provisions by appointing the Attorney General Ano Pala as Acting Governor General.
You look into the provision, ito ko sem. Governor General, time we go outside. Speaker, he must come up. Chief Justice is stop. Speaker must go come up, Governor General. Why? You are misusing the provision of the law.
But Prime Minister Peter O'Neill explained it was a National Executive Council decision because of the Speaker and Chief Justice absence in the country. The Attorney General Minister will be acting for 2 weeks.
Through Muslim Speaker, and got first priority law come up with Governor General, Acting Governor General of the country. Now suppose Speaker am not available, Chief Justice, you got next line of responsibility law come up Governor General. Suppose no cut, took one time no stop, then Cabinet must appoint him, one Prime Minister, Senior Minister, law come up Governor General of the country because this law office. This office, me play no nablo, Lara Mr. vacant.
According to PNG Constitution Part 5, the Head of State, Division 3, on the appointment, etc. of the Governor General, subsection 95 on Acting Governor General, subsection 5, when neither the Speaker nor the Chief Justice is available to be the Acting Governor General, the powers, functions, duties and responsibilities of the Governor General shall be exercised and performed by a minister appointed by the Head of State on the advice of the National Executive Council for the purpose. Fabian Hakalitz, National EMTV News.
The 20% pay rise suggestion that was rejected by PNG power workers through the Energy Workers Association on Wednesday this week was accepted by the union today. It follows a week of long negotiation processes between EWA and the PPL Board of Management on the employees' entitlements. The workers have met with PPL's Executive Director, John Mangos, at their headquarters here in Port Moresby and resumed their duties at lunchtime today.
After 4 days of a sit-in protest, the PPL board and management have come to a compromise with the PPL employees. The compromise includes an increase to the base salaries for all grades of PPL staff. The employees were promised by the Executive Director today that the increase on their base salaries will be paid starting next fortnight.
The union is now in front of all the workers that they accept the 20%, and Mr. Mangos has now given the assurance that it will be added on their pay package next payday.
This same increase was rejected on Wednesday because the suggestion letter stating the 20% pay rise did not state when the pay rise will be paid. The sit-in protest that began on Monday had come about following a claim of over 2 million kina being paid to the Executive Director as his annual salary. This includes other benefits he is entitled to. On Monday, the suspended PPL Chief Executive Officer John Tangit told MTV News that the salary claim on John Mangos remains a claim and the management will respond to the employees' demands accordingly.
But I don't want to see it as it's a claim that's realistic.
So given the restructures that the company has gone through over the last, I'd say 5-6 years ago, it's what we call a single line salary.
However, Mr. Mangos told MTV News minutes after the compromise was reached today that the delay in the board and management's move to reach an agreement with the employees was because of the lack of communications between the three. Mangos said while much of the concerns that led to the sit-in protest were from historical issues, the board will remain focused on moving PPL forward.
Realistically, what we're focused on is making sure the company works moving forward, get it on the proper footing moving forward. That gives us the time, the funds to address any inconsistencies there.
But while not all outstanding issues can be resolved right away, Mangos has invited the three parties to come to roundtable discussions in the future to ensure their interests are met in the best ways possible. Taklagunga, National MTV News.
The Energy Workers Association General Secretary Santi Magis says EWA supports the employment of the suspended PNG Power CEO John Tangit. Mr. Magis said the union will support Mr. Tangit because he is a Papua New Guinean. EWA members said Tangit's suspension is related to the incomplete work on the National Rural Electrification Program in some districts in Papua New Guinea and has nothing to do with the stop work.
We are totally behind his employment as a CEO of PNG Power Limited.
I've taken up that role. So the two roles are combined, so the Executive Director and CEO is combined into one role.
Meanwhile, Lae City's power supply was switched off at 4 a.m. this morning and remained off throughout. It's part of a nationwide strike of outstanding entitlements that's part of a workers' union enterprise agreement not being signed in time before it lapses on Monday. PNG Power workers fear that if it isn't signed before Monday, they won't get their entitlements if the government chooses to sell PNG Power Limited.
Lae's regional office was locked up this morning, workers refusing to see customers. Angao Hospital and PNG water pumps are the only essential services kept working. All PNG Power vehicles were grounded as workers gathered at the regional yard in what's likely to become a nationwide crippling strike.
Now, there has been a short statement released by PNG Power head office in Port Moresby. It basically said that the PNG Power management has met with PNG Power workers union representatives and they've come to an agreement to switch on the power around 12 noon today. But that hasn't happened yet.
The shutdown at Yonki and Ramu Hydropower Station, two PNG Power nerve centers, will keep Lae, Medang, Goroka and parts of the highlands without electricity. Lae PNG Power workers who spoke off camera say the move comes because a union enterprise agreement hasn't been signed and it will lapse after Monday, meaning they won't be able to demand and take action for the outstanding entitlements. PNG Power workers say if the agreement isn't signed, the power will not be restored. The workers say there has been too much political interference meddling with the company's affairs that despite challenges has continued to provide an essential service. They've also maintained that they disagree with the salary cap of a certain high-level executive in PNG Power, receiving 2 million kina per annum. In contrast, they've brought up their request for a 17% increase in salary. Bethany Harriman, National MTV News, Lae.
Well, this week, Prime Minister Peter O'Neill officially opened the port of Motukea for business. The event marked a significant milestone in the development of Port Moresby City and the nation in general. PNG Ports Corporation will operate the port of Motukea as the relocation process begins. MTV's Deli Waigeno has tonight's MTV News special report.
The relocation of PNG Ports Corporation to Motukea Port is to pave way for development in the CBD area.
Welcome to the new gateway to Papua New Guinea. Papua New Guinea is open for business.
Port Moresby has come a long way since the first arrival of European explorers. The site was already an important trade center when the Englishman Captain John Moresby landed there in 1873. He claimed the land for Britain and named it after his father, Sir Fairfax Moresby. After over 140 years, Port Moresby has grown and become a thriving port city. The success turned to challenge as population grew and the government had to deal with the demand for expansion. So 20 years ago, and ironically, it was the PNC-led government of the late Sir William Skate who commissioned the study for the port relocation.
Lo and behold, the man who was the president of the PNC party, Mr. Peter O'Neill, 2012, comes in as Prime Minister, appoints me as the Minister, and his cabinet considered the Tongo report, considered the ACOM report, considered other reports of whether we should build a new port or whether we should buy this port which was already constructed by Ketan Brothers to handle the large cargoes that were destined for the LNG project. So through the wisdom of our PM and Cabinet, we made a decision not to build a port that will take us another 5 or 6 years, but to acquire this port.
According to Prime Minister O'Neill, the decision to relocate the port was a long time coming and it cost this government.
What would have cost us probably 100 million kina at that time, it is now costing us well over 700 million kina today. All this government has been trying to do over the past few years is to correct the mistakes of the past. Trying to build infrastructure that has been neglected for many, many years.
The port sale agreement was signed in 2014 between PNG Ports Corporation and Ketan Bros, who have owned and operated the Motukea port since 2010. The state agreed to pay Ketan Bros 725 million kina for the acquisition of Motukea. In early July this year, IPBC signed a loan agreement valued at 800 million kina with BSP to facilitate the port relocation and relocation project. This allowed the finalization of the sale of the port of Motukea and a transfer of ownership from Ketan Brothers to PNG Ports, as well as the redevelopment of the existing port site in Port Moresby.
My board and management is committed to working in an open, transparent manner, develop this port into a modern world-class facility.
Relocating the port and its operations will relieve congestion in the CBD of Port Moresby. The aim is to have the port relocation completed by 2018 to coincide with the 2018 APEC meeting. The PNG Defence Force Commander, Brigadier General Gilbert Toropo, also confirmed to EMTV that plans are underway to relocate the naval base. Deli Waigeno, National EMTV News.
And in more news ahead, Manam volcano erupts. Also, soldiers charged for attempted murder and calls for the planning department to monitor IDG funds. Stay tuned for all the details. Good to have you back with National EMTV News. The Rabaul Volcano Observatory has confirmed a minor eruption of the Manam volcano in Madang province between 11 and 11:30 this morning. Ash falls have reached mainland Bogia and other areas of Manam Island. The disaster office in Madang is yet to establish the cause of damages caused by this morning's eruption, rather the extent of damages caused by the eruption. Warnings have been issued to the people on the island to be vigilant and to avoid the ash falls produced by this morning's eruption. The Rabaul Volcano Observatory said this morning that the eruption will be closely monitored as volcanic ashes continue to fall. Well, 4 soldiers have been identified and charged with 1 count each of attempted murder over the assault of Jeremiah Yinu. The charges were handed down without bail at the Baroko police station yesterday after a lengthy interrogation. Their fate now depends on the courts whether to grant them bail.
The Papua New Guinea Defence Force, in order to save face, handed over the suspects to police yesterday. The soldiers are from the Force Support Battalion at Murray Barracks. Their arrest was a collaborative effort by the military police and civil police. Commander Papua New Guinea Defence Force Brigadier General Gilbert Toropo again stressed that PNGDF will not tolerate bad behaviours that tarnish the image of the force.
And we have committed to stand together to address this kind of mob rule and undiscipline in the PNG Defence Force. decisively, and we don't tolerate that.
Soldiers involved in such behavior outside of their line of duty will risk losing their job if found guilty. Kokopo says investigations will continue to have those soldiers charged under the military code of discipline as well. He maintains the training is not an issue and it's not to be blamed for the disciplinary problems experienced in the force.
Our training time in Goldie is as effective as what it used to be, 6 months training. It's just that if you look at the trend, it's just 1 or 2 people who have stepped up their line.
The incident that transpired over the weekend resulted from civilians seen wearing military uniforms. It is against military rules, and Kokopo warned all servicemen not to give their uniforms to civilians. Mickey Cavera, National EMTV News.
Kikori MP Mark Maipakai has called on the National Planning Department to monitor IDG funds dispersed to the Gulf Provincial Government. MP Maipakai said over 100 million kina was paid to the Gulf Provincial Government for landowner projects, but so far nothing has transpired. The member raised this concern during a presentation of 9.4 million kina to the Gulf Province at the State Function Room yesterday.
The sum of 9.4 million kina presented to the Gulf Provincial Government is for infrastructure projects in the pipeline corridors of Gulf Province. Kikori MP and opposition man Mark Maipakai said proper monitoring of projects must be carried out as Gulf's record books show inconsistencies.
Gulf administration, our records have not been very good. This is why I'm fighting abuse of funds. And I won't stop until you people get your bookwork right, your administration right.
MP Maipakai says despite millions pumped to Gulf, the lives of the people remain the same.
So planning before any further release of any funds, I'd like a report in Parliament to tell me this is what has gone down. This is how they have been transformed into activities.
Gulf Governor Avila Cavos says no proper mechanism was in place to monitor projects and the new approach taken is fair.
With the MOF funds, there was no control mechanism in making sure going down to see whether the money paid and the project actually were done. And there were billions of kina went down within the project corridor in a province.
National Planning Minister Charles Abel admitted that the running of Gulf administration was poor with no show of services to the people.
The bottom line is that the performance has not been good enough from leadership or from the administration. And I appeal to you on behalf of our people of Gulf Province and our executive government and our parliament, please lift your game. This is a lot of money. This is money coming from the resources further up the pipeline.
Minister Abel says the department will monitor all payments paid to provincial governments under the UBSA and LBSA agreements.
Let's get down there and do our job in terms of monitoring, auditing and monitoring what has happened with the funding. This cabinet has already given that direction, and as part of the reforms for the planning department, we're meant to be setting up a proper M&E process, but also the muscles that go behind the M&E.
Jack Lapave Jr., National EMTV News.
The Department of National Planning and Monitoring launched its official website at the State Function Room yesterday. Planning Secretary Hakawa Harry said the website gives the public the opportunity to see what the department is doing. Planning Minister Charles Abel said through the website, though the website is under furnishing, it drives the government's aim of transparency for public consumption. Minister Abel then launched the website.
The important thing is that information will be there at your fingertips, so you can access it real time.
Of course, very importantly in this electronic age is making sure there is a website and the public has access to that website. And that is why through this website, I want to encourage all of us to get a hold of these documents. Whether you read them or not is another question.
Moves to implement the Affordable Land and Housing Program have gained momentum, with infrastructure work at one location about to commence. National Capital District Commission, or NCDC, will soon commence work at Geruhu following the signing of a Memorandum of Agreement.
The MOA now allows NCDC to commence work at Geruhu Stage 3B, which has been identified as a pilot model for the government's Affordable Land and Housing Program. the Gerehu 3B project will see close to 2,000 allotments on offer for first-time homeowners. The MOA is between the Department of National Planning and Monitoring, the Office of Urbanization and NCDC. According to National Planning Minister Charles Abel, this MOA is another development towards successfully implementing this important government initiative.
So we hand it over now to the city engineer, and we ask him and the NCDC to hurry up and arrange for the procurement of our roads so that we can build our houses and move into our nice new homes in Gerehu 3B.
The Gerehu 3B project has 31 government agencies participating, with 269 public servants to date having qualified for the program. Meribatulo, National EMTV News.
And now we check out the finance news. The Kina closed 10 points lower at $0.3605 US in the interbank market at Bank South Pacific. Our Kina was trading at $0.353 US, 0.4816 Australian dollars, 0.3191 euro, and 43.42 Japanese yen. Looking at commodity prices at New York close, gold, coffee and cocoa all closed the day higher, while copper closed lower. Palm oil closed the day higher, while crude oil and copper closed the day lower. And finally, on the stock market, the Dow Jones closed at 6 points higher, the ASX closed at 45 points higher, and the All Ordinaries closed at 44 points higher as well. Well, ahead in the news, TFF investigations reveal misuse of funds and a breakthrough in the search for missing Malaysian Airlines MH370. We'll bring you those stories when we come back. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the news. Investigations into the disbursement of tuition fee-free funds to schools have shown possible instances of misuse. This was revealed today by Chief Secretary to Government, Sir Manasupe Zurino, who presented the report to the Auditor General to make findings. Sir Manasupe said the Department of Education will need to make significant improvements for the government's fee-free education policy to be effectively implemented.
Chief Secretary to Government Sir Manasupe Zurino talked about the investigations into the distribution of TFF funds to schools. Using his powers, Sir Manasupe had approved and appointed a team of 4 investigators to look into the basis of complaints related to late disbursements, partial payments and nil payments to some schools. The investigation team consulted widely and assessed various documents provided by the Department of Education and consulted provincial administrators, education advisors and head teachers. Sir Manasupe said the tuition fee-free education policy has been in effect for 3 years, and as with new policies, there are bound to be some early problems. But what matters is identifying those problems and working to fix them. Some of the recommendations from the report include the need to establish a committee to oversee the implementation of the policy, proper enrollment data, the ban on project fees to be lifted, and commodity component to be done away with. Right after the media conference, the Chief Secretary asked the Auditor General's office to undertake a full audit of the Tuition-Free Education Trust Fund. Deli Waigeno, National EMTV News.
Community workers, human rights advocates and many more attended a human trafficking awareness session to commemorate the World Day Against Trafficking in Persons. The International Office of Migration, the PNG Government and National Human Trafficking Committee were behind the initiative, which included drama, discussion and speeches on understanding and recognizing human trafficking for its criminal nature. MTV's Alana Leia has this report.
The presentation ended in a lively debate between many activists and community members present on which government bodies and organizations are available in directly confronting the issue. Human trafficking is also known as modern slavery, involving forced labor, forced prostitution, and deception. Those present shared many trafficking claims happening in their communities, one involving fishermen in forced labor in Daru, and another involving a Tolai woman who was trapped in a Filipino woman's house for 5 years. U.S. Ambassador Walter North questioned why the community remained silent and encouraged Papua New Guineans to act on the Criminal Code Act. Discussions also ranged from distinguishing human trafficking from forced or arranged marriages and the definite worsening of human trafficking should prostitution be legalized. But the most important fact established was that trafficking begins with the community and that educating everyone, from the bottom up, as well as understanding human trafficking and reporting on incidents, is a fundamental step forward. All present were briefed on Papua New Guinea's Criminal Code Act, which was presented by the Office of the Attorney General. Human traffickers get 20 years imprisonment, 25 years if the victim is under 18, and a life sentence if the victim dies. Human trafficking happens mostly in PNG's mines, houses, and brothels, with young girls still being sold or offered as compensation in certain areas in PNG. Alana Lay, EMTV World News.
Well, 12 PNG students have been selected by the Republic of Indonesia Embassy in Port Moresby to study in Indonesia universities. This will allow students to learn the Bahasa language and Asian business ethics. The arrangement falls under the Dhamma Siswa Scholarship Program.
Papua New Guinea's closest neighbor, the Republic of Indonesia, continues to strengthen its bilateral relationship with PNG. The Dhamma Siswa Scholarship Program is said to meet the demand as more trade and business occurs between the PNG and Indonesian border. Traditional border crossing is a common day-to-day event, and studying Indonesia's culture, business and language is as vital. Andrew Benny from Eastern Islands is challenged by this opportunity.
Say thank you to all the government, especially Indonesian Embassy, for making this possible for me to apply for the scholarship.
The Indonesian Education and Culture Attaché, Dr. Ir Sederko Melatunan, said PNG is amongst 64 other countries around the world who benefit from the Dhamma Siswa Scholarship. Out of the 12 selected, 8 are from Port Moresby, while 4 from Vanimo. Scholarship awardee Teresa Moya from Central Province was the only female selected in the country.
I am very privileged and blessed to be the only female in this group to study Bahasa Indonesia before we get streamed into different courses.
The 12 selected will join over 600 foreign students studying in various universities throughout Indonesian cities. Jack Lapave Jr., National, EMTV News.
Turning overseas now, search efforts for missing Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 made a breakthrough discovery this week. Wreckage washed up on the shores of France's Reunion Island in the Indian Ocean on Wednesday this week has been identified as part of a wing. The discovery is in line with a chart made by oceanographers a year ago, predicting that the debris could end up on the French island of Reunion. Aviation experts are verifying the wreckage of the Boeing 777, which disappeared in March last year between Kuala Lumpur and Beijing.
Aviation experts identified the wreckage, which is 2.5 meters long, with 657BB stamped on the interior, as a moving wing surface known as a flaperon. A shredded suitcase, possibly belonging to one of the flight's 239 passengers, was also found. Deputy Australian Prime Minister Warren Truss called the findings a significant breakthrough.
I'm informed that it is a realistic possibility that wreckage from MH370, if it entered the Indian Ocean in the place where our current search operations are being undertaken, could have reached the Reunion Islands in the 16 months since the incident. Indeed, areas around Madagascar, not very far from the Reunion Islands, were identified as a likely landfall if indeed there were parts of the aircraft left floating.
Investigators from Malaysia are set to arrive in Reunion today. The wreckage will then be sent to a French military laboratory for checks. In January this year, Malaysia's Department of Civil Aviation officially ruled the disappearance as an accident, concluding that it exhausted its fuel over an area in the southern Indian Ocean. Oceanographers said the Indian Ocean's vast rotating currents could see the wreckage deposited thousands of kilometers from the estimated crash location. Alana Lay, EMTV World News.
National EMTV News continues with Trukai Sports. That's coming up next, and we'll give you all the details after this break. Stay tuned.
Trukai Sports.
Welcome to True Guy Sports. And in lawn bowls, despite having only 6 clubs in the country, lawn bowls produced some exciting results over the years. In the 1990 Auckland Commonwealth Games, Gawa Tau won PNG's first gold medal in the women's singles event. 24 years on, and lawn bowls still continues the legacy in the Pacific Games, bagging 6 medals in 8 respective divisions. However, with the new facilities built for the Games, the sport is banking on marketing its popularity in the country.
Lawn bowls surpassed expectations in its 6 days of competition during the Pacific Games. The emergence of young athletes during the Games is set to spark more interest and the revival of lawn bowls across the country. The partnership between young Cecily Simbinali and Ju Carlo earned the country's 50th gold medal on the medal tally and marked a milestone for athletes on the greens. The youngster then joined her mother, Angela Simbinali, in the women's fours event.
We did have a great time, and thank you all for playing bowling on the greens in Papua New Guinea. We picked the best, and they represented our country well, and we've proven that to the people of Papua New Guinea. Bowls is one of those sports that perhaps must be celebrated in all respects.
The partnership earned them silver. After his disqualification in the 2007 Games, Matu Bazo came back with a fight on the greens. His partnership with Pauline Pomeleo, Lucas Royka and Peter Juni earned them silver in the men's fours event, while Anthony Yogio claimed gold in the men's singles.
The game's got no bounds, and if there's someone willing to come and play, sure, we're always here. They can come and join us. Future prospect, like you said earlier on, our foot's in the door now. Door slightly ajar. Because of the facilities now. Can you please we can reciprocate a lot of games back from Australia, New Zealand.
Over the years, the Defence Bowling Club has become the home of lawn bowls in Port Moresby. The Boroko Lawn Bowls Club now houses 2 artificial turfs and a prospect of a natural turf. Skola Sengi, National EMTV Sports.
The venues and facilities used during the 2015 Pacific Games will not be available for public use for another 3 months. This was announced by CEO of the PNG Sports Foundation, Peter Tiamalili Jr. Each of the venues will now undergo final construction before they are available for use.
Each of the venues will have a different timeline as to how long it will take to complete and be available for use. The final stage of construction will see the correcting of any defects that were identified during the Games. The venues were Games ready for the 2015 Pacific Games but were not 100% complete, and the construction company will need to complete the venues according to their contractual agreement. CEO for the Papua New Guinea Sports Foundation, Peter Chamalili, said the venues will be available for public use towards the end of the year. He also said the venues will have a manager and will be responsible for making sure the venues and facilities are properly maintained. Dion Kombang, National EMTV Sports.
We'll be back with more sporting news. Stay tuned for all the details.
True Kai Sports.
Good to have you back with True Guy Sports. Over to Rugby League. The SPPNG Hunters will be playing their last match this weekend at the Colorbond Oval in Kokopo, East New Britain Province. The rest of their matches will be played here in Port Moresby. PNG Rugby League Chairman Sandis Saka thanked the people and fans in East New Britain for their support.
Weekend is a special weekend for us in Rugby League. Primarily because the Hunters are playing their last weekend in Kokopo this week. I want to, take this opportunity to thank the people of East New Britain, the East New Britain Provincial Government, the people of East New Britain, and the people of NGI in general, the business houses. Looking forward to seeing you all in Kokopo this weekend for the Hunters' last home game. I promise you it will not be the last game. Over the next few seasons, we'll always look at taking 1 or 2 games back to Kokopo every season.
Good. Well, over 300 security volunteers turned up today at the NCDC City Hall demanding payment for their services during the Pacific Games. They claimed that they were promised payment for their services by the Governor's Office and that they would be paid through the Lima Security Services.
Their spokesperson, Christine Thomas, said they have been sacrificing their time and effort
and at least a form of recognition will be appreciated.
Yeah, after the game ball pay me, but me wait on this line 1 week, 2 weeks ago finish so. Last week we come on the media, now this is the second Friday we come on again on the media. Because all promises them today, it's like they will pay me, but nothing today.
Some of them expressing their frustration and dissatisfaction to Lima Security Service and the office of NCD City Hall for not upholding their promise. In response to the complaints, NCD City Hall Executive Officer Mr. Terence Moka said the payments were made today and is in due process.
Management and also on behalf of our Governor for NCD, Honorable Paul Spako, we have made a commitment to our people to engage them, and we are ready to pay them. We will pay the contractor, and they will have to see the contractor and get paid. The check is with the contractor right now. Because they came and did this, he can deposit the check so it can be cleared on Wednesday.
Mr. Moka further stated that NCDC City Hall and the Governor's Office has done their part by paying the money to Lima Security Service as promised, and now it's the contractor's obligation to settle the payments.
By Monday, me deposit, so it will take me 3 or 4 days long clearance, and probably Friday by me payment. Me guarantee was on Friday by me payment because the check is with me.
Mr. Kiab said the Governor's Office had made payment and the volunteers should not continue to protest as they will be paid accordingly on Friday. Shane, Saroya National, EMTV Sports.
Well, to NRL, Friday night football will see Melbourne Storm taking on West Tigers and the Sydney Roosters up against the Canterbury Bulldogs. The Tigers will have captain Robbie Farah back in the lineup, returning from a broken hand injury, and will be desperate for a win to turn their 2015 NRL campaign around. Well, that wraps up True Guy Sports tonight. Stay tuned. We have the weather details for the next 24 hours coming up after this break.
True Guy Sports.
Taking a quick look at the weather forecast for the next 24 hours in southern region. Port Moresby fine, although cloudy at times. Mostly fine expected in Kerema, Hallertau and Popondetta. In Daru, fine weather. Well, that's been the news, sports and weather tonight. I'm Tokana Hasavi Jr. Thanks heaps for your company. You enjoy the rest of your weekend and take care. Good night.